The moment shattered my life not with a scream, but with a whisper that felt louder than thunder. One ordinary evening, fluorescent lights buzzing above us, paperwork stacked like the weight on my chest, I realized that a single sentence could split a man into who he was before and who he would never stop becoming after. In that instant, the future I had carefully avoided imagining stood right in front of me, breathing, fragile, unavoidable, and somehow already alive. I wasn't ready, I wasn't prepared, and yet something ancient inside me stirred, something that refused to run. Before the story goes any further, pause for a second. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of people showing up for one another when life turns upside down, please take a moment to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. I had always been the invisible man at work. Reliable, quiet, never late, never early enough to be noticed. My boss was the opposite, a woman carved from discipline and grace, the kind of person who walked into a room and shifted its gravity. She carried authority effortlessly, but behind it there was a tiredness I noticed only because I spent so much time watching without being seen. Late nights taught me the rhythm of her sighs, the way she rubbed her temples when stress pressed too hard, the way she stared out the window as if looking for a life that had somehow drifted off schedule. I told myself that admiration was harmless, that respect could exist without crossing lines. Life, however, rarely respects the boundaries we draw to protect ourselves. The night everything changed wasn't dramatic on the surface. No rain, no shouting, no cinematic chaos. Just exhaustion, vulnerability, and two people who stayed a little too long in a space that had slowly become too quiet. What followed wasn't reckless passion or fantasy, it was human weakness, the kind no one likes to admit exists behind polished titles and job descriptions. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into silence. I convinced myself it had been a moment best left unspoken, buried under professionalism and routine. I returned to my invisible role, working harder than ever, pretending nothing had shifted inside me. But something had. Every time I saw her, there was an unspoken tension, a heaviness in the air that felt like unfinished business. Still, I told myself it would fade. Life would move on. It always does. Until it didn't. When she finally asked me to stay behind after work, the air felt thick, like the room was holding its breath. She looked different, not weaker, but stripped of armor. Her hands trembled just slightly as she spoke, and I knew before the words landed that nothing would ever be the same again. She explained without dramatics, without blame, without softness meant to manipulate. She told me about the life growing inside her, about the certainty she carried, about how she hadn't slept in days trying to decide whether to tell me at all. The realization hit me in waves. First disbelief, then fear, then a sharp, aching sense of responsibility that wrapped itself around my spine. I thought of my own childhood, of promises broken quietly, of absences that shaped who I became. I thought of how easy it would be to run, to hide behind legalities, to pretend this was her problem alone. And then I thought of the tiny, unseen heartbeat that didn't ask to exist in chaos. I didn't feel heroic. I felt terrified. I felt small. I felt like a boy wearing a man's face. But beneath all that fear, there was something else, something steady and undeniable. Purpose. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. The workplace became a minefield of glances and assumptions. We agreed to keep things private, but secrecy has a way of leaking through cracks. Rumors formed, not about me, but about her, and watching her carry that burden alone hurt more than I expected. I struggled with guilt, with shame, with the fear of being seen not as a future father, but as a mistake. Outside of work, my world shifted too. Friends noticed my distraction, my silence, the way my laughter no longer reached my eyes. At night, I lay awake imagining futures I had never planned for. Could I be enough? Could I provide stability when my own life felt like scaffolding held together by hope? Every doubt echoed louder in the quiet. She faced her own storms. Medical appointments she attended alone, moments of panic she hid behind professionalism, the weight of leadership pressing down harder now that her body was changing in ways she couldn't control. And yet, slowly, almost imperceptibly, something began to change between us. Not romance, not fantasy, but respect forged through shared responsibility. We learned how to talk honestly, how to listen without defending ourselves, how to sit in discomfort without running. I started going with her to appointments. At first, it felt intrusive, like I was stepping into a role I hadn't earned yet. But the first time I heard that heartbeat, fast and determined, something inside me cracked open. Fear didn't disappear, but it softened, reshaped itself into determination. That sound followed me everywhere after that, a reminder that my choices mattered now in ways they never had before. Life didn't suddenly become easy. Financial strain loomed. Career uncertainty hung over us like a question mark with teeth. There were days when exhaustion turned into frustration, when we snapped at each other over small things because the big things felt too heavy to name. But each conflict taught us something vital. This wasn't about us anymore. It was about creating a world where a child would feel safe, wanted, and loved. That I began to change in quiet ways. I stopped drifting through life and started planning. I took on extra work, learned to budget, imagined bedtime stories instead of escape routes. I apologized more, listened longer, showed up even when it was inconvenient or uncomfortable. Fatherhood, I learned, doesn't begin at birth. It begins the moment you decide not to disappear. As her belly grew, so did my understanding of strength. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the steady resilience of a woman who faced judgment with dignity, fear with honesty, and uncertainty with courage. Watching her taught me that love doesn't always arrive wrapped in romance. Sometimes it shows up as commitment, as accountability, as choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. When the day finally came, it arrived the way all real transformations do, messy and imperfect and breathtaking. I held a tiny life in my arms, overwhelmed by a love so fierce it scared me. In that moment, every doubt I had ever carried felt smaller than the weight of that child against my chest. I wasn't ready, but I was willing. And that, I realized, was enough to begin. Life didn't magically resolve after that. We continued navigating work, boundaries, and the complicated reality of co-parenting under unusual circumstances. But we did it with honesty. With kindness. With the understanding that people are more than their worst decisions. That second chances aren't about erasing the past, but about choosing a better future. If this story has touched your heart, if it made you reflect on responsibility, forgiveness, or the quiet bravery it takes to step up when life surprises you, please take a moment now to like this video, comment, and share it. Your engagement helps keep stories like this alive and reaching others who need to hear them. Before you go, I have one special request. Please comment one line below about what this story made you feel, or who it reminded you of. Your words matter more than you know, and they might be the kindness someone else needs today.